Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. An old lake house, a fog-covered shore, and a quiet man with a hidden war room. When ex-Navy intel Noah Pierce inherits his father's property, it's the perfect cover to watch a crooked HOA's dock. But the deeper he looks, the more he finds. A smuggling ring hiding behind picket fences. When my father passed away, he left behind an old lake house in Cedar County. A battered moss-coated structure on the North Shore, hidden behind towering evergreens and the kind of fog that made neighbors believe ghosts lived nearby. According to the county, it had been vacant for over 2 years. According to the local HOA, it might as well not exist at all, which suited me just fine. Officially, I was just a son cleaning up his late father's property. A guy with a toolbox, a rented dumpster, and a generator humming out back. But unofficially, I was embedded. That creaky old house was a listening post, my war room, and a damn good vantage point for observing the nearby HOA-owned community dock. You'd be amazed how much criminal stupidity happens under cover of neighborhood tranquility. I'm Noah Pierce, 37, private intelligence contractor, formerly Navy intel, and before that, a guy who spent way too many months translating intercepted comms in Basra. Now, I'm on contract with the county's Interagency Task Force, ATF, Sheriff's Office, and a few other alphabet soup types, and I've got one job: monitor a string of suspicious night deliveries happening by boat on this lake. Drops, exchanges, disappearances, and they all seem to tie back to one address: the Cedar Point Shores HOA Community Dock. The house was a wreck when I arrived, roof sagging like a tired spine, porch soft as cake batter. But I didn't care. I wasn't there for aesthetics. I set up my work in layers. First, the believable stuff: toolboxes in plain sight, a stack of plywood, a fake contractor's sign out front. Then the real gear: motion-sensitive microphones tucked under the eaves, wide-angle night vision cams angled toward the dock, and a dedicated scanner tracking marine frequencies. The lake was quiet by day, but after midnight, things got interesting. Within 5 nights, I caught my first confirmed drop. A boat, no navigation lights, glided into the HOA dock at 2:15 a.m. 2 silhouettes. One stepped off, tossed a duffel bag to a white van with the logo of Clearwave Marine Contracting on the side. The van didn't linger. Engine on, tail lights gone in seconds. Classic dead drop. Classic smuggling. Classic HOA-level plausible deniability. I didn't interfere, just logged it. Timestamps, infrared stills, audio. I'm not a cowboy. I don't break cover unless I have to. My job is to get the full picture, build the timeline, and let the task force move when the net is ready. Things would have stayed simple, quiet even, if not for her. She showed up just after noon on a Tuesday. Beige windbreaker, oversized sunglasses, clipboard gripped like a weapon. The kind of woman who looked like she could cancel a school play with a single phone call. "Hello," she called from outside my gate. I wiped my hands on a rag, stepped onto the porch. "Can I help you?" She squinted at me like I'd just tracked dog crap onto her carpet. "I'm Karen Sloan, president of the Cedar Point Shores Homeowners Association. We weren't informed anyone would be moving into the McKinley property." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, it's my father's place. I inherited it last year. Just doing some work." She frowned. "Our HOA guidelines require all residents to register with the board. We also need a copy of your keys for emergency inspections." I blinked. "Sorry, did you say my keys?" She didn't flinch. "Yes, for property checks, compliance inspections, pest control, mold risk assessments. You know, safety." I laughed. "Couldn't help it. Ma'am, I'm not a member of your HOA. This property is outside the boundary. County assessor records confirm it." Her expression didn't change, but I saw the twitch, a little vein above her eyebrow. "That dock down there is ours. We have a duty to ensure surrounding properties don't affect the community's peace and visual standards." "I'm not using your dock," I said, "and you've got no jurisdiction here. You're welcome to call the county. They'll confirm." She glanced past me toward the side of the house, where the generator was humming like a lazy tiger. Is that even permitted? Generators disturb lakefront harmony. I held her stare. "I'm not in your jurisdiction. This is private land. You have no standing here." Her jaw clenched, and I could practically hear the spreadsheet of violations forming in her head. "We'll be following up," she said curtly, and marched back to her Prius like she'd just performed a blessing over cursed land. That night, I double-checked my boundary lines, not because I doubted myself, I don't, but because something in her voice made it clear. This woman didn't accept no as an answer. My parcel was clean, registered as non-HOA since its original platting in 1968. Legally firewalled from their petty little kingdom of gazebo paint codes and passive-aggressive newsletters. Still, something didn't sit right. Her appearance wasn't just a nosy neighbor move. It felt strategic, like she was testing me, seeing if I'd fold. I flagged the incident in my task force log, time-stamped the interaction, and added a note. Possible HOA interference. Maintain cover. That was the first time I met Karen Sloan. I didn't know yet how deep she was. I didn't know about the contracts, the van, the payments. But I knew one thing. Whatever she was protecting, it wasn't just lawn aesthetics. The letter came in a manila envelope, slid under my door like some passive-aggressive threat note from a bad TV drama. Except this wasn't television. This was Cedar Point Shores, where HOA paperwork apparently carried the same weight as divine edicts. I found it at 6 a.m., just as I was pouring my second cup of black coffee, still dressed in the same boots and thermal shirt I'd been wearing for 3 days. I unfolded the paper with the same suspicion I give anything printed in Comic Sans and saw exactly what I expected, a formal notice of non-compliance, courtesy of the Cedar Point Shores Homeowners Association, violations listed: 1. Unauthorized generator usage after dusk. 2. Improper placement of construction materials visible from the lakefront. 3. Lack of approved HOA renovation plans filed with the board. I chuckled. The last one really got me. They were fining me for not submitting blueprints to a homeowners association that didn't even have jurisdiction over my land. Cute. Still, I wasn't stupid. Paper trails mattered. I scanned every page, uploaded it to the task force archive, then drafted a formal cease and desist through my lawyer. I wasn't just some contractor from Craigslist. I had legal muscle behind me and receipts to match. The reply from Karen came less than 24 hours later, this time by email. Subject line: Urgent Community Safety Compliance Request. She wrote, and I quote, "Due to ongoing health and safety concerns, our HOA board requests immediate access to your property to perform a visual inspection for mold, structural instability, and potential impact on shared lakefront aesthetics." I laughed so hard I almost snorted coffee through my nose. The audacity, the phrasing, shared lakefront aesthetics. That woman had weaponized HOA vocabulary like a bureaucratic warlord. I didn't respond to her directly. My attorney, Cheryl Yu, did, citing Washington State RCW 64.38 in beautiful, soul-crushing legalese. Cheryl had a gift for eviscerating stupidity with polite professionalism. She included satellite plats, historic zoning maps, and 3 highlighted phrases: not subject to HOA, private property, no express or implied easement. For a brief moment, I thought that would be the end of it. But then the power went out. No storm, no wind, no warning. Just the deep, abrupt silence of systems dying mid-cycle. My backup server beeped in protest. The generator outside was still running. That wasn't the issue. I grabbed a flashlight, checked the breaker panel. Everything inside was intact. That's when I noticed it. The lockbox on the external meter had been tampered with. Not professionally, sloppily, scratches on the paint. A small piece of plastic sheathing caught in the hinge. I crouched beside it and opened the hidden compartment built into the siding next to the meter. Inside was a passive current logger, a little something I'd installed myself when I realized just how petty this HOA might be. It logged every interaction with the electrical input, when power was cut, when the panel was opened, when someone even touched the casing. Timestamp: 3:27 a.m. Access anomaly detected. I smiled. Gotcha. I didn't say anything right away. I let it simmer. People like Karen operate on entitlement, but they also bank on your ignorance. They expect you to yell, to call the cops, to make a scene, because that gives them leverage. But when you stay quiet, when you just smile and document, that terrifies them. Later that afternoon, I saw her Prius parked at the HOA clubhouse across the inlet. She stood at the edge of the dock, arms folded, talking to a man in a bright orange safety vest. He handed her a clipboard. She signed something. Then, without even looking across the water, she walked back inside. I returned to my office, the hidden one in the back, disguised as a storage room, and reviewed the footage from the external perimeter cams. At 3:24 a.m., a utility truck, unmarked, rolled up near the boundary between my property and the HOA maintained landscaping. The driver got out, popped the rear doors, pulled something that looked an awful lot like a tool bag, and disappeared off camera. At 3:27, the logger flagged the anomaly. At 3:33, the truck drove away. I submitted the footage and logger data to the task force archive, along with a memo. Suspected coordinated tampering with utility access, strong HOA involvement. Recommend verification of subcontractor credentials. That evening, I rerouted power through my generator permanently. It had enough juice to keep the essentials running and more than enough to keep the observation station online. I also ran an independent line through a backup conduit I'd buried myself, using a camo box with no visible identifiers, my own failsafe, in case someone got creative again. And, just to twist the knife, I installed a sign on the fence facing the HOA's side of the property. Private property, no trespassing, not subject to HOA trespassers will be recorded big reflective letters. Impossible to miss. The next morning, someone tossed a bag of mulch over the fence onto my driveway. Passive aggression in biodegradable packaging. I didn't bother picking it up, just snapped a photo, geotagged it, and dropped it in the archive. Because now I wasn't just watching them. They knew I was documenting everything, and that meant they were about to get sloppy. I'd barely made it through half a protein bar the next morning when the knocking started. Not the hesitant kind. No, this was righteous knocking, HOA knocking. I glanced at the live feed from my porch cam, and there they were. Two guys in matching navy polos with Cedar Point Shores Association stitched over the breast pocket, and one very familiar woman holding a clipboard like it was a holy relic. Karen Sloan, in all her bureaucratic glory. I stepped outside, still chewing. "Good morning," she said, voice taut with smugness. "We're conducting a scheduled emergency safety inspection." I wiped my hands on my jeans. "Scheduled by who?" "The County Lake Authority," she replied, holding up a piece of paper like it was a badge. "We received a report of potential gas leaks and chemical hazards. Under emergency protocol, we're authorized to inspect for community safety." I took the paper. It was formatted like an official government notice. Letterhead, a blue stamp, even a QR code. Looked legit until you knew what to look for. "You mind if I scan this?" Karen narrowed her eyes. "Excuse me." I stepped back inside, pulled out my laptop, and ran the QR code. The URL led to a broken redirect page with a domain that hadn't been updated since 2019. I cross-checked the stamp's serial number through my sheriff's liaison. It didn't exist in any official registry. Counterfeit. Sloppy, too. I walked back out, handed the paper back. "This isn't valid." Karen's jaw tensed. "Are you refusing a mandated safety inspection?" I nodded. "Yes, I'm refusing a trespass attempt based on a forged document." "That's a felony." One of the guys shifted uncomfortably. The taller one looked like he just realized he was on the wrong side of a police lineup. The shorter one looked like he couldn't spell felony if you spotted him the F and the Y. "You leave me no choice," Karen said. "We'll have to escalate this through the HOA legal board." "Go nuts," I said. "Just know that this interaction is being recorded from 4 angles. And, by the way, I already called the sheriff." I didn't need to finish the sentence. That was their cue to retreat. 20 minutes later, Deputy Rhodes pulled up. Solid guy. Played linebacker for WSU back in the day, now spent most of his time babysitting HOA disputes and drunken paddleboarders. He reviewed the footage, the document, and my logger entries from the last few nights. His verdict was short and to the point. "This is garbage," he said, holding the forged safety notice. "This looks like it came from some online template site." I nodded. "QR code leads to a blank shell site. The whole thing's a front." "I'll file the report," he said. "Tell Karen she's one forged letter away from criminal charges." As he was leaving, he paused. "Keep an eye on your utility line. There was a complaint last week about equipment noise from your property." I raised an eyebrow. "They trying to call in code enforcement now?" He shrugged. "Wouldn't surprise me. Some folks think running an HOA gives them more power than a sheriff's badge." After he left, I did another sweep of the property. Camera angles, backup generator levels, drone pass over the shared dock. Nothing new. But that night, the pattern shifted. Around 2:10 a.m., the marine scanner picked up a quiet ping. Bluebird. Drop 4. No lights. I was already awake. Hadn't been sleeping much lately. Too much caffeine. Too many open tabs in my mind. I pulled up the infrared cam facing the dock. There it was. A boat sliding in, low in the water. No running lights. Same profile. Albin 28, fiberglass hull. No visible numbers. 2 silhouettes. One offloads a duffel bag. Again. But this time, something was different. The recipient wasn't the usual van. It was a man, tall, late 40s, wearing HOA contractor overalls. He carried the bag toward a shed beside the clubhouse, unlocked it, and slipped inside. No vehicle. No wheels. Just stashing it. I snapped stills, logged timestamps, and made a mental note to check the HOA maintenance permit logs. That shed wasn't on any official blueprint I'd seen. The man's face caught briefly in the reflection of a window. Strong jaw, surgical scar on his temple. I cross-checked it against the Regional Task Force watch list. Name, Owen Vale. Known courier. Suspected of smuggling high-end aftermarket weapons parts. Never caught. No priors, no fingerprints, just rumors and blurry photos. And now, he was walking around HOA property in uniform. I marked the footage, tagged the county ATF liaison, and backed everything up to my encrypted external drive, which I stored in a custom-cut recess beneath a loose floorboard in my tool shed. I had no illusions. If Karen or anyone else broke in, I'd need redundancy. That morning, the HOA emailed me again. Subject: urgent HOA membership clarification. Apparently, they'd found a cartographic discrepancy suggesting my property might actually fall within their legal boundary after all, due to a recent replatting initiative. I forwarded it to Cheryl. She responded in less than 5 minutes. Horseshit, legally meaningless, stalling tactics, stay frosty. So I did, because now it wasn't just about harassment. Now it was about cover-ups. And I was starting to see how deep this rabbit hole went. It was the radio ping that set it all off. Short, clipped, and almost lost in static. Drop 5, shoreline, no eyes. Maritime band, encrypted tone. But I'd heard enough of these to know it was real. And not random. These guys were getting sloppy or confident. Both worked in my favor. I muted the generator hum with a dampening mat, switched the internal lights to red, and moved to the attic perch. A corner of the roof I'd refitted with sound baffles, a weatherproof shell, and a panoramic infrared cam linked to a silent drone. Stationed 3 houses down, cloaked in a birdhouse. At 2:13 a.m., the boat came. Same silhouette. Albin 28, just like before. No navigation lights, no identifying numbers. It slid toward the dock like a ghost through molasses. 2 on board. 1 remained seated, probably engine idle control. The other stepped out, bag slung low, hoodie drawn tight. I tracked him through 3 separate cameras as he cut across the dock and vanished behind the community clubhouse, the one HOA uses for events and storage. But he wasn't headed for any registered access point. He slipped behind a utility box, paused, then disappeared through what I now recognized as a concealed side entry to the maintenance shed I'd seen Owen Vale use, which, for the record, doesn't exist in any of the public plans submitted by the HOA for zoning or county permits. He came out empty-handed less than a minute later, jogged lightly back, and the boat disappeared into the mist just as quietly as it arrived. I pulled stills, time-coded, layered infrared, high-contrast face profile, partial shot of the bag with shipping barcodes barely legible through the camera's noise suppression. This time, I didn't wait. I made a hot call to my ATF liaison, Agent Lena Colburn, and filed the footage in metadata into the case folder marked CPS Dropline/Series B. 15 minutes later, I put on gloves and made my way around the lake, keeping off paths, cutting through wooded buffers until I reached the back of the HOA clubhouse. The shed was padlocked, standard steel clasp, weather-worn but untouched. That's what I expected. No idiot would leave contraband unlocked. But the ground told a different story. Mud slicks where tires had rolled in, impressions of boot soles near the siding. One of them had a distinct gouge, triangular tread with a cut in the midsole, military surplus. More important was the trash bin near the north wall, a big green thing labeled Event Supplies Only. Inside, beneath a stack of folded lawn chairs and an unopened bag of charcoal, was a collapsed box. I pulled it slowly and checked the label. Polar Tech Hunting Optics. Barcode still intact, but this wasn't for some deer spotting gadget. I took the box back to the lake house and scanned the code through ATF's restricted inventory channel. The result: red flag match. This batch of scopes was originally purchased by a wildlife preservation nonprofit in Idaho 4 years ago, shipped to a federal grant partner, and listed as destroyed in inventory error last year. Except now one of those boxes was sitting in a Cedar Point Shores HOA trash bin. The next morning, I tracked HOA financials via the county's public expenditure registry. They'd filed a dock repair grant reimbursement for over $180,000. The recipient? A company called Blue Heron Realty LLC. I'd never heard of it. So I dug deeper. Registered agent Malcolm Sloan, same last name. Not a coincidence. A quick check of voter rolls and tax records confirmed it. Karen's cousin. The same cousin who'd filed bankruptcy twice and mysteriously started renovating docks last year. I forwarded the information to Cheryl and Lena. Within the hour, I got a secure reply. Possible laundering front. High priority. Monitor physical access to lake zone. At that point, I knew I was sitting in the eye of a storm. This wasn't just HOA harassment anymore. This was logistics, distribution, layered fronts. They were using a lakeside HOA as a shell operation for moving military-grade optics, and likely more. I didn't know yet what Karen's full role was. Maybe she was willfully blind. Maybe she thought she was just doing favors for her cousin. Maybe she was hip-deep in it. Didn't matter. What mattered was that she was protecting something, aggressively, consistently, and illegally. And now her fake inspections and safety violations had the smell of obstruction. I restructured my surveillance protocols, added redundant local backups, and reinforced the entry points. If they came again, I wasn't going to just film them. I was going to catch them in the act. I should have known she'd crack eventually. People like Karen, they don't do subtle. They prod, push, probe your boundaries with fake citations and sugar-coated threats. But when that doesn't work, when the paperwork fails and the phone calls don't scare you, they kick in the door. Literally. It happened on a Friday afternoon. Overcast, quiet. I was running trace simulations on vendor invoices linked to Blue Heron Realty, mapping the shell companies across 3 states. Coffee was cold, scanner was humming, and every angle of the dock was under watch. Then, the gate creaked. Not opened, slammed. I heard metal snap and wood crack. I flicked to the front camera and froze. Karen Sloan. Flanked by 2 men in Cedar Point Shores safety team vests. Glorified rent-a-cops with walkie-talkies and 0 legal authority. One of them carried a crowbar like it was a leash. The other had bolt cutters in a canvas bag. No knock, no doorbell. They were already halfway up the porch. I hit record on all cams. Then the front door burst open. "Emergency inspection!" Karen shouted like she was announcing a fire drill. "We have credible reports of chemical storage and electrical hazards." I stood in the hallway, calm. "You're trespassing." Her eyes darted around. "This is a community safety action under provisional HOA authority." "You have no authority here," I said. "I've told you. I've shown you. You just committed felony forced entry." She ignored me. "We need to access the rear structures. Possible biohazards." Behind her, the taller guy was already moving toward the back room. The office. That's when things shifted. He opened the door and froze. Karen, following 2 steps behind, stopped short, and for the first time since I met her, she said absolutely nothing, because there it was. My war room, wall-mounted monitors, surveillance timelines, redline maps of dock deliveries, a 3D model of the lake's topography with drop points marked in fluorescent ink, a corkboard with photos, boats, faces, license plates, strings connecting shell companies, flagged invoices, forensic accounting prints, and dead center on the main display, a paused image of Owen Vale entering the HOA shed with a duffel bag. Karen's face turned pale. The taller guy stepped back like he'd just stepped into a police precinct. The crowbar hung uselessly at his side. I slowly walked past them and reached under my desk. Foot switch, click, child lock deadbolts engaged from inside the frame, electromagnetic, my own retrofit, the kind used in lab cleanrooms, windows sealed, doors shut. The house was now a box, silent and locked. The monitors switched to recording mode, red dot blinking. Karen turned, saw me standing by the desk, and her voice cracked for the first time. "What is this?" "This," I said calmly, "is where I document illegal activity tied to federal crimes. including, as of about 30 seconds ago, forced entry and obstruction of an active investigation. She snapped out of her daze, lunged forward, hand outstretched toward the laptop. I stepped between her and the desk. That's tampering with federal evidence. Don't touch it. You can't do this, she shrieked. You just broke into a house that doesn't belong to your HOA. You forged documents, harassed a licensed investigator, and now you're on multiple live feeds, all being backed up off-site in real time. She backed away. You're bluffing. I opened a drawer and placed a laminated letter on the desk. County Interagency Memorandum, signed by the sheriff and ATF Regional Liaison. I'm authorized to monitor this area for activity related to arms trafficking. And guess what? Your HOA contractor is in the middle of it. At that moment, the scanner buzzed. Marine Band, encrypted, but familiar. A voice. Cedar Point, drop 2, clear lane, no lights. Karen heard it too. Her face twisted. She turned to the taller man, the one now openly panicking. Get out, she hissed. Now! The guy reached for the door, realized it was locked. Sit, I said, pointing to the couch. Both of you. You're not going anywhere. The laptop's mic, still hot, captured everything. Every whisper, every command, every denial. Outside, I heard the low hum of a motor approaching. Another boat, another delivery. Probably Vale again, thinking tonight would be like every other. Karen's panic was full-blown now. She paced the room, muttering. They weren't supposed to. It was just money for the dock. Malcolm said it was clean. I didn't respond. I didn't need to, because in less than 5 minutes, everything would collapse. The motor was close now. Low hum, deliberate throttle, no navigation lights. Same signature I'd tracked over 5 nights. I pulled up the dock feed and confirmed. Albin 28. No registration, twin-hole wake pattern. Vale was right on schedule. Inside, the room was silent except for Karen's erratic breathing and the faint buzz from the laptop's fan. Her hired muscle sat frozen on the couch, staring at the monitors like they were showing footage of a prison he was about to occupy. I activated the encrypted line and keyed the phrase into the task force channel. Cedar Point, package 3 active. It wasn't a fancy call for backup. It was a trigger, code for a pre-cleared operational go, authorized the moment we confirmed visual on a target at the dock during a scheduled drop. Within seconds, I received a ping. Task Force Marine Unit en route. 2 vessels, one from the eastern public access ramp, one covert unit shadowing from the north end, hidden behind the tree line. I turned back to Karen. You just kicked in the door of a federal operation, I said. You've got about 90 seconds to decide if you want to go down for accessory to trafficking or obstruction. I don't know anything, she snapped. This was about property standards. You forged a safety notice, I said flatly. You conspired with a contractor running illegal drops from a HOA facility. You sabotaged power. You harassed a licensed investigator under contract with the county. Her face twisted with rage, but beneath it, fear, real fear. The kind that only comes when the world you control starts crumbling. Outside, headlights flashed briefly on the far side of the lake, the Marine unit signaling final approach. I pulled up the live feed from the drone. Vale was mid-transfer. The boat had docked. He stepped out, bag in hand, moving with surgical speed. This time, it wasn't going into the clubhouse. It was going straight into a different white van, unmarked, parked behind the HOA maintenance fence. It had a magnetic sign slapped on the side reading Lakeview Irrigation. He tossed the bag inside, closed the hatch, and made for the driver's seat, until the lake lit up. Twin beams. Sirens off, but unmistakable law enforcement presence. The van reversed. Vale hit the gas, but the second unit had already closed the opposite lane. He jammed the wheel, tires screeched, then the engine died. Someone had blocked the intake. He bailed, ran toward the shoreline, but it was too late. 4 armed officers surrounded him, weapons low but ready. He hit the dirt, hands behind his head. Classic takedown. The drone caught every second of it. I turned the screen so Karen could watch. She didn't blink, didn't move. Then she whispered something. I told him to keep it away from the clubhouse. It wasn't a confession, not exactly, but it was enough. I tapped the audio record hotkey. Everything went to archive. 15 minutes later, a black Tahoe rolled into my driveway. Sheriff's office. Agent Lena Colburn stepped out. ATF windbreaker. No nonsense in her stride. I opened the door before she knocked. Room sealed, I said. They're inside. Lena raised an eyebrow. They? Karen and one of her hired guys. Inside, she took in the scene in one sweep, then addressed Karen directly. "You are currently inside an active operations zone," she said. "You violated no less than 3 state-level statutes and are under review for federal interference. I suggest you remain seated." Karen looked like she'd been slapped with a cinder block. Lena continued, "We've recovered 2 duffel bags, one loaded with illegal firearms components, cereal wipes, suppressors, cash, all from a delivery that occurred less than 30 minutes ago on HOA-controlled property. That's your jurisdiction." "I didn't know," Karen muttered. "Then you shouldn't have kicked in the door of the guy watching it." The second guy, the safety team muscle, looked like he was about to wet himself. Lena cuffed him without another word. Karen didn't resist. She just sat there, stunned, staring at the monitors as if trying to piece together how a dock repair scam turned into federal charges. Lena turned to me. "You did good," she said. "Very clean. Very tight. We'll debrief tomorrow." I nodded. "You'll want to check the shed behind the clubhouse and the HOA clubhouse server. I think they were running logistics off it." She smiled grimly. "We've got warrants being executed as we speak. Nice war room, by the way." She left with the suspects. I watched from the porch as Karen was led to the Tahoe, her shoulders hunched, mouth tight. She didn't look at me. Didn't have to. The illusion of control, of HOA supremacy, of property power was gone. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she knew. She picked a fight with the wrong quiet guy fixing up a lake house. It should have been over. With Vale in custody and Karen hauled off in a black Tahoe, the air around Cedar Point shores finally felt still. But stillness is deceptive, like lake water, calm on the surface but crawling with things underneath. I spent the next day cataloging everything. Footage backups, printed screenshots, exported timestamps. I ran a secure offline audit of all surveillance data and packaged it into 3 encrypted bundles, one for ATF, one for county records, and one stashed in my emergency dead drop box under the compost bin labeled Garden Lime. I wasn't paranoid. I was thorough. Cheryl had already filed civil intent notices against the HOA for forced entry and damages. Agent Colburn assured me the forensic team was tearing apart the HOA clubhouse server, cross-referencing payment records, and following the trail of Blue Heron Realty's fake invoices. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Karen wasn't done. And I was right. Just past midnight, no alarms, no power cuts, no motion alerts, I noticed something on the north-facing cam. A shadow slipping through the tree line behind the property. Not Vale. Too short, but fast. Purposeful. I zoomed. Karen Sloan. No security detail. No clipboard. No smug expression. She was holding a folder. I watched her circle the shed, then crouch near the back entrance. She wasn't running. She was burying something. I moved fast. Threw on a jacket, grabbed my flashlight and a body cam, and slipped through the side exit, circling around to flank her from the west trail. No words, no warnings. I hit her with the light. She froze. "Karen," I said. "Step away from the ground." She turned slowly, squinting like she hadn't fully accepted she was being seen. "You're violating release terms," I said. "You're under federal review. This is tampering." "I didn't," she started. I stepped closer. The folder was half buried in damp soil. I pulled it free, careful not to smear anything. Inside, HOA payment logs, internal emails, a printed spreadsheet titled Contractor Alternate Routing Private Only. I flipped pages, names, addresses, expense totals. Some of the addresses matched drops I'd logged. Others were new. This was her own backup, her own contingency in case things went sideways. But instead of turning it over, she tried to bury it. "Who else has this?" I asked. She shook her head. "Just me." She looked tired, like the scaffolding of her ego had collapsed, and all that was left was survival mode. "I didn't sign anything," she muttered. "I didn't touch the money directly. It was Malcolm. I just managed the permits." "Then why try to hide this?" She didn't answer. I called Lena. Within 10 minutes, a cruiser from the sheriff's office pulled in. Karen didn't resist. Again. This time, it was tampering with evidence. Conditional release violation, potential obstruction of justice, strike 3. The next morning, I met Lena and the forensic accountant from ATF in the county records building. We mapped the full network from the HOA's internal ledgers to the shell companies. Turns out, the money flowed through Blue Heron to a second LLC, Rustwing Imports, listed in Oregon under another alias tied to Malcolm Sloan. From there, it bounced through fake vendor payments for boating accessories. then straight into off-books delivery vehicles that avoided federal shipping lanes. The clubhouse shed had a false floor. Under it, packing slips, burner phones, receipts for prepaid fuel cards, even a laminated checklist titled Drop Night Prep. But the kicker, a template in Karen's desktop folder, a fake County Lake Authority inspection form, complete with logo, QR code, and seal overlay. She'd made it herself in a PDF editor, the same document she tried to use on me. We had her, all of her, and we had Vale's phone, cracked, decrypted. Inside were messages from Karen. Keep it discreet. Use Malcolm's Gate. Remind O to turn off lights this time. Make sure neighbors don't see it land at CP Dock. Every word was evidence. Every message was another nail. I was no longer just the guy watching the dock. I was now the key witness in a federal smuggling case. And Karen Sloan had just sealed her fate with a shovel and a manila folder. Federal courtrooms don't feel dramatic. There's no thundering gavels, no screaming objections, just gray carpet, old wood, and a quiet intensity that says someone's life is about to change. Karen Sloan sat at the defense table, pale and subdued, in a blazer 2 sizes too big. No smugness left, no clipboard, just silence. The prosecution laid it out clean. Forged documents, obstruction of a federal investigation, willful interference with an undercover operation, conspiracy to commit fraud via HOA funds, attempted destruction of evidence while under conditional release. The folder she buried? Exhibit A. The clubhouse shed? Exhibit B. The email chain from her to Vale? Exhibit C through G. The jury needed 2 hours. They returned without eye contact. Guilty. On all counts. Judge Simons handed down the sentence, 12 years federal facility, no parole for the first 8, plus a lifetime ban from holding any position of fiduciary or administrative authority in any HOA or nonprofit. But that was just Karen. Owen Vale pled out 17 years federal prison, firearms trafficking, interstate smuggling, tax evasion. He tried to flip on the supplier upstream, but his intel was outdated. The network had moved on without him. Malcolm Sloan, picked up by marshals 2 counties over, hiding in a fishing cabin he didn't own, charged with wire fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. 8 years plus full restitution. The Cedar Point Shores HOA dissolved. Their insurance dropped them. Their legal reserve account frozen by court order. The county appointed a temporary administrator, and the civil suit filed by Cheryl, on my behalf and several homeowners, went through without a challenge. Verdict: HOA to pay damages for unlawful enforcement, property damage, and emotional distress. Total $650,000, split among plaintiffs. They tried to appeal, failed. The clubhouse was sold to cover the payout. The dock was torn down. The HOA office turned into a county-run information booth with a single sign out front: County Public Access, no HOA authority, federal waters. Poetic. As for me, I kept the lake house, finished the repairs, reinforced the office, built a proper dock, private, locked, legal, donated half the payout to the volunteer search and rescue team that now uses part of the house as a satellite post for water patrols. Kids get trained there, drones get prepped, missing boaters get found a little faster now. The rest? I used it to take a few weeks off-grid. Just me, some gear, and the kind of silence you don't appreciate until you've lived under HOA tyranny and surveillance-grade paranoia for 3 straight months. People still ask me if Karen ever reached out. She didn't. Maybe her lawyers told her not to. Maybe she knew there was nothing left to say. But if she had, I would have told her this: you thought you were the authority here. You thought a badge made of laminated paper and a little neighborhood power made you untouchable. But the law doesn't belong to HOA boards. And when you try to bury the truth, someone's always watching.